we just saw how we were doing some sanding to make sure that that drawer would slide nicely. Now we're going to get into how to make the actual drawer slides that will carry the drawer in and out. My original plan for this drawer was to route some grooves into this material, since I've got so much material to work with here. I could route a groove in and then glue some guides along here, some rails that would slide into there. However, order of operations is so important in woodworking. I should have routed those grooves before I ever glued it to the top, because the problem is now I can't put it on my router with a fence because this thing is in the way. So there's just no way that I can do that and have a set distance. There may be some router bit out there. I've got a pretty wide selection of router bits, but I don't have one that does that. So I'm gonna save myself about 30 bucks, 35 bucks to buy a decent router bit, and I have enough material here to cut a shallow groove in this material here, so that's what I'm going to do. I have what's called a keyhole bit, and that's meant for cutting holes, kind of like what you see on the back of a power strip. I don't have one right in front of me, but I can use it for what I'm doing. So let me show you how I set up the router bit. So I set the height first to where the middle of the narrow part of the shaft is just barely, that's where it starts for height, and then for the left to right, I want to make sure that I'm only going through the part that cuts out. So I use a straight edge, a ruler, to make sure that everything lines up nicely and that I'm only cutting into the groove that I want to cut into. So that's what we need to do. I've already got it set up, so let's go ahead and try that out. Because of the bit that I'm using here, it's really not designed for this exactly, but I don't have a whole lot of vertical clearance as far as how high or low my cut is away from the top or bottom edge. So I need to decide, do I want the slide to be sitting on the bottom of my drawer or at the top of my drawer? I think I'm going to go with the top. When you're routing, a good way to know if you did it right is to go over it again, and you shouldn't hear any cutting noises because it should have cut right the first time. There's a little bit of play just because this edge isn't perfect, so when I came here, it kind of like had to bounce up a little bit, so there's a little bit of a ridge right there, but I think that's going to be just fine. So I have a very narrow shelf to work with. So what's going to happen is on the other piece, there's going to be a piece of wood that goes into this, the male end, and this will be the female end that's going to ride on that. So, but I think we're going to be okay. And also, this is where it comes out, so that's not going to pinch going in. So I think next we need to build these rails that will fit in here perfectly. We have some scraps that may work perfectly for this. So let me see. I have some scraps from when I cut this piece off, and they may actually be just right. So let's take a look. All right, we've got what I would consider a win. So these are the cutoffs from when I chopped out this drawer. These were from the sides we just did a couple of steps ago. And look how beautifully they fit in that groove. Just perfect. So, and both of them do. Obviously, they're both the same thickness. And they're not, this is the shortest one, so that's our control. They're not the full length of the drawer, but if you look, the important thing is where where the circle ends up. So I can push it to, you know, right there. That's about as far as I want to go anyway, because it's going to be chopping off right there. So we're going to have the drawer in, it'll be upside down, but right there. And so if you pull it out past that, then it's going to come off the rails, but that's just fine, because we want the drawer to be able to come out all the way. So we want them to come to right there anyway, and this one's even longer. So what we're going to do is we're going to shave these down to just a little bit bigger than the depth of this, so that we can glue them into here. We want to try to get perpendicular or parallel sides to these. That's going to be the hard thing, but I'm going to just play with the belt sander where I just changed the belt, and hopefully we can get this fairly parallel. I may actually even throw a level on top of this. It might be kind of funky, but We want these to be parallel, or maybe I'll use some calipers or something. We'll figure out how we're going to do it. It shouldn't be that difficult. So let me show you guys a cool trick with calipers. They don't even have to be on, but here's the depth that I need to cut to, right? So calipers have, this is for your outside diameter of something, or if you were inside of a hole, then you would use these jaws to get the inner diameter. But there's also a plunge down here that a lot of people don't know about on calipers. So this will measure the plunge depth. So all I do is throw this on here, put that on there, so that's my depth that I need to be at. And I'm going to back it off just a hair, or bring it out just a little bit, so that, you know, because I want to cut these to a thickness just a little bit bigger than I need to, by like maybe that much. So then I can go and lock this down, and what that'll tell us is the thickness that we need this to be needs to fit inside those jaws, because it's the same measurement as that. So we'll just keep grinding this down until it's that way, and then the way that we'll make sure it's flat and parallel is that we'll run this all the way across after we're done, and make sure that's how we'll know that it's the same thickness all the way across. Alright, there's one down. It's very difficult to do this, to do the fine end parts of this on this big old machine. So you may want to do this with sandpaper at the end just to kind of hone it in. But for like we're here where we got to take out a lot of material, here's what we got to get to. Here's where we're starting. It's good to use this big behemoth. Alright, we've got our two end sticks there. It actually reminds me kind of the same dimensions of like a corn dog stick. But yeah, so I think that's going to work pretty nicely. So let's see how it fits in the actual piece. This is still a little bit too snug, so I think I'm going to take these down just a little bit more until they both fit in there nicely. It'd be kind of difficult to sand this out evenly. Again, order of operations, I probably should have done that first, or set the distance a little bit differently or better. So, but that's all right. So I'm just going to keep taking these rails down a little bit, little by little, until they're both happy to kind of slip right in there. Just did a little bit more work, just one more sanding, and now I can slip this in here. A little bit snug towards the back. That's fine. And then the important thing is that without these, it still slips nice and smoothly. Because once these are in here, I can always go in with a little bit of sandpaper and just knock those down just a little bit more until this fits nice and smooth. But we are in good shape. So I think what I'm going to do next, well, first I got to make sure to cut. I'm going to cut these to the same length. Just do that real quick on the bandsaw. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to push these rails all the way to the back, and I'm going to keep them in the drawer, and I'm going to glue the backs in, and then after that dries, I can move it out further, and I'm also going to clamp them kind of like that. And then once that's dried, then I'll be able to gently peel this end back and put some glue in there, and then hopefully it'll be all dried straight. So that's the best way I can think of to do this. You guys are probably watching thinking of a whole lot better ways to do everything that I'm doing, but this whole channel is about you guys being able to learn from my mistakes, so that's just fine. Okay. Run these all the way to the end. this here just as some weight so that it doesn't want to tip backwards. And then I'm gently going to clamp these just to hold a little bit of side pressure. Basically, I'm using the drawer itself to make sure everything's level where it should be. So I'm only just gently putting a little bit of pressure with these little baby clamps. Only so that it's really just making contact with the outside. Okay, so that should take, oh shoot. Okay, it's still okay. I bumped it. So this shouldn't take too long. I think I'll give it about 20-30 minutes to get kind of tacky. If you clamp these too hard, it can start moving your thing in different directions. I'll give that maybe 20-30 minutes, and then I can pull the drawer out and glue the other pieces on, or the rest of the drawer back on. So I think that's good for now. Man, I tell you, the more woodworking I learn, the more I realize it's kind of like chess, where the more steps ahead you can think, the better outcome you're going to have. So this one, you've seen that if I would have done my order of operations a little bit differently, it probably would have worked out better. So just take note. The whole thing is I'm just learning. I'm just trying to teach myself and learn from what I've seen online. And I hope you guys are learning along the way too, from my successes as well as especially from my failures. While we're waiting for this to dry up, I was thinking, I'm not certain that the plastic pieces that come with the regular set that my mom already has will fit in these holes. It's kind of been a guess the whole time. So I figured, well, why not just let her leave that as a different set and make her some pieces. So what I did was I took the same drill bit that I drilled these holes with, drilled a little hole in this just scrap piece of wood, found a nail that will fit in here, and there's just some finishing nails, or these are actually just for like hanging pictures, so painted white. So I think what I'm gonna do, these fit in there very nicely, a little bit loose. So what I'm gonna do is take off the point and take off the head here. And I have some 3/16 dowel that's super, super thin. I don't know, but I'm gonna try drilling a hole right down the middle of that and see if I can put like a little colored head on top of here. And I'll either paint the little pieces 3 different colors, because I think there's 3 different players, or maybe even stain them 3 different stain colors. I think I have a really dark, like a really super dark walnut stain, and then I have like a redwood stain, and I have just a regular clear coat, so that would be 3 different colors, a red, a brown, and a lighter, very light brown. If I can't drill down the center of that, which I may not be able to, I can always just paint the ends of these 3 different colors. I've got blue and white and green and red and a bunch of other colors that I can use. So while we're waiting for that other thing to dry, I'm just gonna play around with this and see. I think at first I'm gonna chop off a little cross section of this and see if I can't drill down it. All right, here's the real test to see if we can drill a hole down the middle of something so narrow. Didn't split. That hole might not be big enough. Nope. I need a bigger bit. I'm kind of scared to go bigger. This particular bit's kind of wobbly. A little bit bent. But I guess it's just a proof of concept. So we'll see if this works. That's not gonna work. It just breaks. There's really just not enough material. Oh well. So I guess we can still grind these down and paint them. Okay, it's been about 40 minutes on here. So let's go ahead and try to throw a little dab of glue in the rest of this track here. And we'll just use this nail to be our applicator. Same on the other side. I'm always the one saying how difficult it is to get the glue off. after the fact, but in this case I'd rather chip off a little glue, because if I wipe that I'm probably going to mess up the alignment. I'll grab a couple more clamps. Let's see. I'll get away with wiping a little bit here. Save myself a little bit of work down the road. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to throw the drawer on there just to make sure that these ends are lined up, just on the very end there. Put this back on there just to, again, make sure it's flush. And then throw a little bit of clamping pressure here on the end. Just so it's pressing up against there. And I'm going to have to take the drawer out so it doesn't get glued in. So I'm just going to have to hope that that lined up good enough. And then we'll have to come in and clean up the squeeze out with a little bit of sandpaper, maybe a little chisel or something. So we'll give that another half hour or so before we do another test fit. Just using some vice grips here, and I'm going to grind off the tips, and then I'll flip them all around and grind off the heads. You know what? I think it has a little more character if I leave the head on the pin. It looks a little more rugged. I know my mom's a fan of that, so we're going to leave the head on. You guys ready for the easiest paint job ever? We've got red, white, and blue. These are already white, but I'm going to add some white paint to it just for continuity. This is yuck from before. Get rid of that. So, just going to dip these in. I drilled some holes in here that are the right size. But even if they're not perfect, it's that nice rugged camping look. So we'll start with the white, I guess, since we already did that. There's 2 whites. And we'll do our reds. And our blues. Well, that's the fastest I've ever painted 6 things, 3 different colors. America. As you saw, painting those pins was super easy. It's the cream of the crop for this project. I would almost recommend saving it for the very end because it's just such a nice, easy thing to do. Anyway, so that's all for this video. Thanks for watching. If you want to stick with the playlist, our next video we're going to pick up with adding the magnet to make sure that the drawer stays closed. So thanks very much for watching. Always leave your comments in the section below and let me know how you would have done things better, because the whole point of this channel, again, is to so that I can learn from my mistakes and hopefully you learn from my mistakes as well. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.